He's like, we need someone to build us out a modern network, or we're going to lose a $20 million a year account with Walmart if we can't do EDI. And I don't know anyone else to call. But if you go all the way back, it starts with holding someone's briefcase.
All right, welcome to Quest for Keys, where we highlight key moments in entrepreneurs' lives that unlock the doors for the path to success. I'm your host, Hone Tai, and joining me is the ever-inspiring Alvin Uy. Today, I'm excited to welcome James Bates, a visionary entrepreneur, co-founder, co-CEO of Datapath, an innovative technology and cybersecurity company that made the Inc. 5000 list for the fastest-growing private U.S.-based company for 6 consecutive years. That's incredible growth. Datapath went from a startup in Modesto, California, and to a nationally recognized IT powerhouse. He is also the founding board member of CodeX, an organization dedicated to teaching coding to low-income students, which he then transferred the curriculum to the school districts to continue with the transformations. Of course, that's not all. Of course not. Because he also enjoys real estate investing and development, where he operates out of the buildings that he owns, which is a very rare thing for these IT companies. Guys, let's welcome James Bates. What's going on, James?
Hey, great to see you guys.
What's up, man?
What's up, Alvin?
Hey, man, I just want to thank you for going on this podcast, man. I know you're a pretty busy dude, doing big things, and you're one of the most impressive guys I've ever met. And I just want to thank you for being on our call today.
Oh, that's humbling. I don't know how I'm the most impressive man. I so appreciate you, Alvin, and I'm impressed by what you do and your character, and had a blast in Morocco hanging out with you and getting to know you even better. So thanks for the kind words, but I definitely look up to you, man.
Oh, likewise. So, as you know, this podcast is about our life's journey. We started as potentially ordinary men and somehow unlocked different things, finding keys along the way that set us to a new path that we found success and became maybe extraordinary to some degree. So I wanted to know if there's any kind of key moments in your life where you felt like, here it is. This is the life-changing moment right here. Do you remember any of that at all?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of those things was at a very young age. I was about 6 years old, and my dad's a minister. And I remember this guy came over, and he was with my parents and hanging out, and we were praying together. And I'll never forget, he was praying. He's like, I feel like James is supposed to be a minister, and he's going to be a preacher. And when he left, I started crying, and I was like, I don't want to be a preacher. I don't want to be a pastor. And I remember my dad, who's just a big human being, just a beast of a man, built like a NFL linebacker. And he put his big old bear paw on my back, and he said, son, first of all, if you're supposed to be a minister, that's a special calling from God. You'll know it. Second, never feel pressured to do something because someone else wants you to do it. And he started taking me after that to a group of 300 businessmen in Oakland. And it was guys that would just share their stories. But that exposure to business at that very early age, I was like, that's what I want to do. I don't know what kind of business, but I want to be in business.
Wow, that's quite the story. That's really cool that you got that exposure to all those business people, and then that kind of transformed your mind. Because I think why a lot of people don't get into entrepreneurship and starting their companies is because they're not around it. They just don't know anybody who's done it, but they know everybody. They can name 1,000 people who's an employee. So they're just like, yeah, I guess I'm just going to get a job. But you were like, nope, I'm going to create that business. With that experience with your dad, though, do you find yourself easily dismissing what others might believe for you? Like if somebody comes with their own opinion, like, oh, you should do this, you should do that. It's like easy for you to dismiss, like, nah, I'm good. This is the path that I'm going. And you're able to just reflect off all that.
I think we've all experienced shiny object syndrome, right? Where at times people come and it sounds really good. One of the things I've always, just since I was a kid, I always just pray for wisdom and discernment. Like, let me see what other people don't see. in this and what feels right for me. I think as an entrepreneur, though, we're also opportunistic and we see things sometimes and we jump before other people would jump. So it's a balance. I'm human like anyone else, right? There's things that sound really intriguing. But for the most part, yeah, I'm definitely willing to say no to things that aren't in my lane or don't feel like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And I love seeing other people succeed. So because someone else is succeeding, and it doesn't mean that that's meant for me to go try to copy them or jump into. It's great to celebrate them, but that doesn't mean I need to copy them or go try to be them.
Yeah, so you and I were talking while we were in Morocco, and I think you and I had kind of agreed that it takes a special person sometimes to recognize certain things. And I know that you and I had something in common where, correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't go to college, right, James?
I did not go to college. I thought I would. I had full ride scholarship offers for baseball, but got in the technology route, and at 17 was recruited to be an IT director for a 550 employee, $80 million a year company. Something I never would have thought. I was always outdoors. I would never thought I would have got into something like technology. But yeah, it's an interesting journey of how all that came to pass.
What was that like? Like being 17, all of a sudden you found this sort of opportunity, and at that time, did you have any inkling of, is this the direction for you? All that stuff. Like I want to kind of go back in the past and kind of relive that from your perspective.
Yeah, I think going all the way back, and one of the things I always watch from my parents is a heart of service and just serving. So if you go all the way back to when my dad was taking me around all those business people, there was one gentleman, his name was Ronnie Svenhard, who was the president of the organization. And there was a lot of really successful people, but he was like the creme de la creme of the successful people there, if you will. And I watched him, and people would come and talk to him for sometimes an hour, 2 hours after the meetings. And he would carry this huge Pendaflex briefcase. And he traveled a lot. And I remember at like 7 years old going up to him and saying, "Hey, Ronnie, would you like me to hold your suitcase or put it on this chair and just watch it for you?" And I remember he looked down at me and he was like astonished. And he was like, "Well, yeah, that would be great." And then my dad, with the heart of service, he's like, "Hey, you guys are always setting up PA and churches and stuff. We're always setting up PA. I could help you. I could start bringing that stuff. I could break it down, set it up." And it was after a while that he started saying, "Hey, do you guys want to come to lunch with me after?" And just through that heart of service. Well, long story short, as I got into technology, all self-taught, basically from being poor and not having encyclopedias and getting a computer, and it broke a couple times, and then I fixed it the second time, and I was like, I'm never going to let this machine beat me. I'm going to figure out everything I can about it. And that's what got me into technology. So I could go into all kinds of crazy stories of digging trenches to have Pac Bell run my own phone lines and stuff in the room or to the house, because we maxed out every phone line in the neighborhood. But that whole heart of service and that turning into serving all these years later, Ronnie Svenhard was the one who owned that 550 employee, $80 million a year company. And he said some of the stuff I'd done over the years of also giving back, writing databases for conferences, etc. He's like, we need someone to build us out a modern network, or we're going to lose a $20 million a year account with Walmart if we can't do EDI. And I don't know anyone else to call. But if you go all the way back, it starts with holding someone's briefcase.
Wow. That's like, oh man, right place, right time, but more importantly, right person. You're that right person, and then it just started the domino effect. That's really cool. That's really cool.
But it's also about just leading with value, and I think that's one thing that a lot of people, don't recognize. A lot of people are always like, "What can I get? What can
Right.
I get from this person, or whatnot?" And they don't always lead with value, and that's one thing I love about James. It's like he's always leading with value. The most humble guy I know, like incredibly wealthy, obviously, but at the same time, man, it's like he doesn't even show it. It's just he's just a normal guy, just out there, just making sure he's exactly that, just giving service to everybody else ahead of himself. You know, that's one of the reasons why we clicked, met him in Morocco, man. He was just like, wow, who's this guy? I'm like, I really like this guy. And it's just, his energy was just really calming. But he's also a lion. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that a little bit, man. James, I know you got it. You have this sort of calm demeanor, but at work, what is your demeanor like as a leader of your company?
It's transitioned over time. There's had to have been a lot of growth personally on my side, internally. When I first started, the one thing with baseball, I was really good. I think coaches did me a disservice by letting me get away with an attitude and some things because they just wanted you to play and they wanted to win. And I got away with a lot of, if other people, they weren't practicing as hard, they weren't working as hard. And then if they make an error or they were complaining about starting, I'd let them have it. I'm like, you don't put in the work, you don't do this. Um, but the coaches never disciplined me for that. And I think getting into IT initially, it was like you were some wizard magician back then, right? Like, how do you do this? How do you figure it out? And everybody's telling you, oh, you're the man, you're the man. I'd walk into places and feel like, oh, here's James the genius and all this. So as we started getting team members and they weren't at the same level, which rightfully so, they wouldn't be. They hadn't had the same level of exposure or opportunities. I let that become my identity. And it was like, hey, if you're not performing at that level, you're affecting my identity. And so I behaved as such. And so then it makes you temperamental. It makes you angry, snapping at people. And ultimately, I love people. And it took years to really realize, like, I'm doing exactly the opposite of what my real core value is, of building other people up. And, it's not all just about delivering for clients. It's like, yeah, we're getting it done, but am I leaving bodies in the wake? And that's not who I want to be.
Wow.
It's incredible that you were actually able to recognize that about yourself, because that tyrant, James the tyrant, that identity could have continued for your whole entire career. You could still be James the tyrant today and not know it. And people would just be afraid to even tell you that. But you were able to recognize that and then adjust accordingly, which is a pretty big thing. How are you able to, one, recognize it, but then two, change? Because people can recognize that, yeah, maybe I'm a little harsh on people, but like they still can't change because they're just like, I don't know how else to get the best out of people. And we have these clients that we need to service and we're just not delivering. And so it's affecting my identity and da 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 da. How did you actually change that?
It's a series of things that help change. Of course, in my faith and spiritual and praying about it, but also having the right mentors. You have to open yourself up to people that there's no quid pro quo. They don't need anything from you. You don't need anything from you, but they can speak life and truth. And I intentionally sought out 2 or 3 people in a tight circle that would give me that feedback, and also starting to do things like Codex with Manny Escamilla, who's an amazing human being, brilliant. And you realize, like, man, there's so much more joy in the world, and just getting out of my whirlwind of being in the same industry, but then learning from that and saying, well, wait a minute, if I can respect and treat all of these other people like this, how come I'm not doing that with my own people? So this is actually my pastoral role, if you will, right? So what kind of shepherd am I being? And it really hit me that the people here are the ones facilitating me to be able to go out and do those amazing things in the community and make that kind of impact. So instead, I look at it as, I'll just tell a quick story. Like, when I was going through my divorce, I was married to my high school sweetheart, and we were married for 11 years, and we just grew apart. And we're still really good friends to this day. Completely amicable divorce. Like, it's amazing, considering the horror stories I've heard of for so many other people. And I had someone approach me, a fairly prominent woman in town, while I was going through a divorce. And she said, hey, can I meet with you? And just something told me, like, I think she wants to meet because she's thinking about getting a divorce. I just kind of felt that. And we met, And I remember her saying, "Hey, I know you're going through a divorce and stuff, and I see you're traveling now and doing that. It all sounds really exciting, sounds really fun. What's it like?" And I was like, "Why? Why are you asking that?" She's like, "Well, I'm kind of thinking about maybe leaving my husband and this and that." And I just told her, I said, it's really chaotic. I said, I don't know your situation. I don't know if your husband's abusive or on drugs or those kind of things, or there's affairs going on. She's like, "No, none of that." And I was like, "Well, it sucks." I was like, I used to walk home. I walk through the door and my son would run up to me and say, "Daddy, daddy, daddy," and want me to pick him up. I'm like, that's never going to happen again because he's not going to be 2 years old hanging out at the house by himself. So you're signing up for a life of chaos. Just no. And hard not to get emotional thinking about it, but I remember her contacting me just even a week later and it's like, wow, I was not expecting that response. I've canceled my working with my attorney. I'm not going through with it. And here it is now 15 plus years later, her and her husband happily married, doing great. So I look at that same thing from, like you said, James the tyrant to, hey, if I can be the example, it's like, if I can get past it, anyone can get past it. So let me show you what I did to combat the anger, letting the identity go. It's not, I'm James Bates. I'm a human. I'm not Datapath. Datapath is a great company. It's something that I'm privileged and blessed to own with my business partner, David, but it's not who I am.
What a story. Oh man. Oh man, you saved that marriage and you saved her a life of chaos because I don't know if she had kids or not, but yeah, being separate and
Yeah, they do.
having kids and being in two different households. I mean, yeah, it's tough. It's tough on the kids too, especially because, mommy and daddy, they used to be right here and now mommy's over here and daddy's over there and it's different. So wow, that's incredible. And then now, have you separated that identity, like that data path and you and all of that? Like identity is a big thing, and people struggle with that because the label that they put themselves, like they put on themselves, causes them to act a certain way. But they have to realize, like you did, that you are not your label, you are not your identity. The identity actually is the ego giving you this title, and then you're trying to live up to your ego. So this separation between you and your ego and realizing that there's James and then there's the James that your ego created and being able to distinguish between the two must have been really powerful, but also really difficult. What was that like though? Like how did you separate that?
I mean, there was a lot of alone time, to be honest. There were tearful nights at home, like really thinking through, like, why did I respond that way? Why did I react that way? What's motivating me? And really getting to the root of it's an identity issue, right? And who do I want to be? And that was the bigger motivator. It's like I hated the end result when I got it done, but then I didn't have anyone around me that that liked the way that it got done. And then I also remember there's a pastor, Stephen Furtick, that I really like a lot of his messages, and he had this sermon I had listened to, and I'm very like, as far as type A, everything's always put away. I'm not a sticky note, paper, chaos. And I've had a sticky note on my desk for years and years and years. And he had this message called 3 Habits of a Healthy Heart. But one of the things that he talked about is this verse in the Bible where it says, "Incline my heart." And he talked about inclination, meaning if I'm inclining something, that's not its default position, right? And so I put that as a sticky note on my monitor every time I got on a stressful call. If I was walking around, I'd walk by my office, I would look in and say, wait a minute, I've got to incline my heart. So even though my default might be anger, identity, I'm worried about my identity or what I look like, I need to actually be thoughtful and purposeful and incline my heart to produce a better result. I can't tell you how many times I've looked at that note and it's caught me in a fly and it used it as a tripwire to totally change my response. And that was a really big thing for me. It's like anything. It's like going to the gym. You got to do it over and over again. You're not going to get it right the first time, and it's building that habit. but it's let me become just so much more. When you let that identity stuff go, you're completely authentic and you're just relaxed. And that's how you make great bonds with people like Alvin and I did, because Alvin's the same way. He's super transparent, super authentic. That's why we clicked, is you're able to, I don't care. My first question to somebody's not, what do you do? I want to get to know them as a human being.
Wow. that was deeper than I expected. that was fantastic. You know what that reminded me of though? And you and I got to chat a little bit before the recording started. It's because your son's so interested in the NFL and then being the general manager. It's like when the athletes review the tapes, when they watch themselves play and they go, "Oh, how come I was tackled there? How come I was able to get sacked there? What happened there?" And then they come up with a better plan. Right. And you're just reviewing the tape. And so you're just reviewing your own tape of where you stumbled on the field of your job or your company. And then not only that, you created like an atomic habit thing, a trigger where that sticky note just reminded you of what you need to recall and implement into your life. So it's like,
that's
simple.
A great analogy.
Yeah. That's what Alvin hired me to be on the show to come up with those on the fly.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think we all have facades too that we let out. It's not our real selves, and everybody deals with that. It's our own ego, but it takes a really humble person to let that go, man. That's incredible thing that you did there, James. I can't say anything that would really just show that you're just an authentic person, and it shows right through. It's amazing.
One other thing, Hone, that I just remembered that I did that really made a difference is, and anybody can do this, is at the end of the day, think about the various people that you encountered and then just say, which ones of those do I feel left better from that encounter with me and which ones left worse? And if there's ones that left worse, what could I have done for that to be a positive encounter?
That's good. I'm like recalling all of the people that I've just spoken to recently. I'm like, man, that one didn't go so well, but this one did. And so I get that. I get that. Now it's reviewing the tape and figuring out that little actual action step to do, right? It's like, which one did I do really well? And what was it? What was that key differentiator versus what I did when that person felt less great, So
I had a really cool mentor, this guy named Wayne Betts out of Texas. And I was in my 20s, and my boss at the time we were just killing it. We were executing on stuff, and things went a little sideways for a little bit, and he was irritating me. And we're great friends and stuff to this day. This guy, Brian, he taught me so much, and I have a ton of respect for Brian. And I'll never forget what Wayne told me. He called me Bubba. And he was like, Bubba, the only thing you can control is your response.
Right. It's that quote, right? It's that between stimulus and response, there's that space. What you do in that space is everything.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Wow. No, that's amazing, because why this is really great, why this conversation right now is really great, is because a lot of our listeners, they're going to be big time entrepreneurs. It's just simply because, like, starting off this podcast, the only people who are going to be listening to it are the people that Alvin and I know. And typically Alvin and I, we just hang around in circles of entrepreneurs, like 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure, like your company, like 8-figure a year entrepreneurs. And so making money isn't necessarily the skill set that they lack. It's being somebody that they're proud of, actually, because a lot of people can be the Alvin the tyrant, James the tyrant, Hone the tyrant. It's almost easy to be that, to just rule with an iron fist to get the results that you want. And what's interesting is Steve Jobs kind of made that cool, because Steve Jobs was known to be a little bit of a tyrant, and then he developed the iPhone. And so a lot of entrepreneurs heard that and they were like, okay, I got to be a tyrant, whether I really am or not. And so I don't actually think that that's where people number one, want to be, or number two, should be. Because people should be loving, and the world should run off of more love, not hate, and not stress. So to hear how you, who's running this 8-figure a year company, was able to run it from a place of love and separate that tyrant that like, hey, it's all about the numbers. It's like, look, you don't have to be so harsh with your people, and you don't have to be so harsh with yourself, really. You just have to reflect. Spend a lot of time reflecting, and they too could be as great as you, James.
They're better. I think, right before we hopped on this podcast, it isn't amazing when somebody does something better than you.
Yes.
And it is. And I love that. I'm definitely not the man anymore. Like, we have so many great men and women on our team that are so much more competent and capable than I am. And it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding seeing their lives succeed and what they're doing. So that's on the other side of this, it's like, you talk about reaping what you sow. When you sow that kind of positivity and you see people have healthy relationships in your company, and they have positive conflict resolution, and they can still strive and grow and accomplish things, and they have their own financial literacy, and they're executing well within their families, and they're making generational change with their kids. That fuels me. That makes me want to grow a bigger company, to have a bigger impact. And you better believe they're totally taking care of our clients in a different way, because they're thinking about clients so much more empathetically, because they're being treated empathetically, and empathetically, not in a soft way at all. Like, we care about being the best versions of ourselves, but also having that candidness, being able to be direct with each other, and knowing our whole motivation and intent is just to see all of us grow, but it's done in a healthy way instead of a dysfunctional way. You're always going to motivate people more. I know I'm motivated by the people, not because I'm afraid of them, because I don't want to disappoint them. So if I can lead in a way where people don't want to disappoint me, then I feel like I'm being successful, because I'm modeling something that they actually care about.
What's opening up for me from what you just said, and what I know about you and your company, you're currently in 8 states, and you're servicing lots of clients. And I can imagine running multiple locations with however many employees you have, servicing however many clients you have. There's going to be like a breakdown in the system somewhere, right? There's going to be a problem somewhere, and the system, the process that you have could be refined, but you are not hands-on at every juncture within your company. So you need people to bring to your attention where things are broken, so that you can figure out a better way to do it. If you are James the Tyrant, people become scared to tell you that something's not working well. And that means that things could not work well for years. And then how much that ultimately cost you? By being empathetic to them and making them feel safe, they can then bring up to you things like that, where you can now make your company more efficient, you service the client better, and ultimately make more money, whether you're selling more, higher revenue, or you're saving more, being more efficient. So even that empathy that you're talking about has a bottom line result. It's just not like touchy-feely, lovey-dovey. It's like, guys, you want better bottom line numbers? Be empathetic so that you can be more efficient.
So what it does is, one, you stop being the bottleneck as the leader, and it lets people iterate. Because thank God, we all know as entrepreneurs, we've made so many mistakes and wrong bets and things, and people have let us make those mistakes. And then some way we think we're going to control other people from making mistakes, and that's going to breed success. It's exactly the opposite. So when they know, they're truly, I don't even like to use the word empowered. It's so fake most of the time. It's like you're empowered up to this, economic level. You can make a decision up to, but truly empowered. It's like, so we started that. I remember during COVID, feeling really disconnected, and everything was on Slack and text or phone calls, but everything was so transactional. It was very tactical. It's like, hey, what's the status on this? What are you doing? And you miss the water cooler conversations, like, because it's like you're going to get carpal tunnel if you're asking everybody how was their weekend and talking and over text. And so I asked a couple of the guys, I'm like, hey, would you be cool just coming to my house? We can open the windows, whatever you feel comfortable with. And let's have lunch together. And we called it the account service strike team. And I was like, I want you guys to know my idiosyncrasies, how I think, how I process things. And I want to know yours. So that way you don't need to come to me. You're going to already know how I would process that, how I would think. And I know that you're going to take those things into account, but you're going to not be me. You're going to put your own unique blend and skill set on it. And you're closer to the problem than I am, which means you're going to have a better solution. And as we did that, my ask to them was, now you pick 2 people each that you mentor in the same way. I mean, we talked about everything from financial literacy to kids to health, you name it. We accomplished so much together through that. And now those individuals are making, and have been for a long time, making massive decisions on their own. But has everyone worked out perfect? No, but none of them were catastrophic. They've made incredible improvements that I never was even involved with. And they're executing on such a high level. And then you see their team around them executing on a high level, so on and so forth. It's amazing. So me getting out of the way has facilitated much more innovation and much more growth.
And that's how you build an organization with people who are better than you, because you're truly empowering people. And when they're making these really big decisions where they can actually fall on their face, they're very careful. And then with that kind of thoughtfulness, that being careful to not fall in their face, even though it may still happen, it's like they really do grow. They really think what's best for the company the way that you would. And that's why you are so good at what you do, because it matters. And then for them, it becomes something that matters to them. And then they step up, and then their inner genius, that really shines. And then it gets even better because their skills develop. And so then you have a whole organization full of people who are way better than you, who not how, for like on steroids. And you're just like, wow, look at this company that I created. And all these people know how to do stuff that I have no idea how to do. I'm making the decisions because I'm the co-CEO, but really whatever they decide is probably better than anything I would have come up with.
For sure. They do it every day.
I kind of want to ask you, kind of shift the topic a little bit here. We talked in this show, we talked about dragons and challenges in our lives that effectively maybe we might be facing right now that might be getting in the way, or whatever is, in front of us. And these might be fears or anything like that. I'm going to ask you, like, is there a dragon right now in your life that you're challenged with or facing, and what's the plan of attack?
I don't know that I would label anything as big as a dragon right now, and I'll give you some perspective on that. In 2022, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. Completely came out of left field. Did not expect that, and it put everything in perspective. And so things that used to stress me out, they don't even remotely stress me out anymore. I'm like, it's not a cancer diagnosis, and thank God I had was blessed to be able to go to Stanford and had a 7-hour surgery. It's a whole other story, but it's a miracle I'm even talking right now. The surgeon said, I've never seen anything like this. Everything was on your vocal cords and your voice box. Everything was stuck, but yet I would pause and it would slide off like butter. That doesn't happen. That happened 12 times in a row. I heard that you FaceTimed with your son as you were being wheeled into recovery. He's like, that doesn't work like that. You were intubated for almost 8 hours and your voice was totally strong and clear. But do I have things that I don't have any? I sleep well. I sleep really well. I don't have things that keep me up at night, but there's definitely things especially in the cyber world, third-party breaches, things that were out of control, vendors that we use can completely wreck you overnight. I mean, we're in this, unfortunately, we get a lot of clients because they're on the other side of a breach and they're trying to do the security retroactively, which you can't. But also I have really reflected on things where I'm like, I have played it safer than I should have. And I think earlier on, especially business partner and I, we were buying a lot of stuff in real estate back in 2010, 11. I'm like, oh my gosh, why did we not buy more? We should have gone more all in on that, right? Probably I'm getting a lot more comfortable using more leverage for sure with the business. We see the arbitrage of our valuation versus what we can pick companies up for, but also just what we do for them and that culture and the other pieces. So I think I have more of a focus and impetus to do more. I want to do less things, but more significant things. So that's probably
What's an example of that? From a high level, that makes sense. But what's a specific?
Yeah. So specifically right now, my business partner are talking, we want to do another 2 acquisitions in the next 12 to 18 months. And we haven't done one in the last year. And there are reasons and things for that, but I really want to double down and grow on that. We've got an incredible team. We've got great organic growth, and we have a team that's capable of doing it, and it creates more opportunities. So those are some areas I want to double down. I was talking with our good friend Daniel Del Real, who lives here in the same town. I'm blessed that he's right here with me, and I had him looking over some multi-unit stuff for us, and was like, "Hey, I really, our return on equity is 5.9% on that. I'm playing it way too safe. Like I should be looking at moving up into some bigger things with some of these properties." So those are some specific things that I'm working on because I know how we'll leverage those assets. We've done it time and time again to fund acquisitions, do those kinds of things. So those are some specific things, but also I really feel like I've gone from leadership to calling. I feel really comfortable, and I feel like, okay, do I want to have my own podcast around being authentic and having these kind of authentic conversations? Because as I've been a guest on other podcasts, I've had leaders from all over where to me, it's just me. It's just my story. But they're like, I'm struggling with that same thing. You had no idea what that meant to me. This, like, dude, can I have a conversation with you? Or I'm having this going on in my marriage, or I'm having this going on in my business. And I'm like, wow, if I can impact people like that, why am I not doing more of that? And I'm so blessed to have an amazing team where I'm not needed on the transactional day to day. I'm more on the strategic focus. I really want to go for it. And I think I've always kind of been a behind the scenes person. And I feel okay, maybe there is, if I can, it's not about ego. It's like, if I can really help people and have a broader reach, then I want to do that. So that's part of like building out this podcast studio in our office and having a greater reach. So.
Wow. Okay. That was pretty specific. Thank you. Yeah. The whole idea of this, like, what's this dragon that's in your way and all that kind of stuff, because what we want to hear from our guests that come on here is that it kind of shows off that you're a human, right? You're a human, and as humans, we deal with human things, but then also extraordinary humans typically have extraordinary solutions for these dragons that everybody deals with. So whether it's divorce or disease, like, these are very human things. And yet you've been able to navigate both of those things, whether it was luck or whether it's your own just like grit that allowed you to come out the other side pretty unscathed. It's like we get to learn from that. And so it's really great to hear that you've had so much life. It's unfortunate that you had to experience so much life, but I'm happy a person like you had those experiences because you have this desire to help others. And then that's ultimately what this show is about. And it sounds like the show that you create will be something similar, where people deal with human things, and yet here are extraordinary solutions, the keys, if you will, to get through those doors that stop you. So thank you for that. Yeah. So I like to go a little, like, there's touchy-feely, and then there's like the business aspect and all, right? Because, at the end of the day, we're all business, and we're interested in making money, because the money, it's not about the money. It's the money represents how much impact we're making in society in a way, right? And so you went from starting like garage startup kind of thing, right, to now nationally recognize Forbes 5,000 fastest growing company, 6 years consecutive, all of that kind of stuff. That transition, most companies don't do that. You did that through both organic growth as well as acquisitions of other companies. If you don't mind, just kind of like lay that out. And also, how difficult was that? And what's the human side behind all of that? If you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in business since 2005. So, I mean, it's like I to say, it's an instant overnight 19-year success, right? So one of the things my business partner and I did well is before we started the business, we spent a year working on the business plan. And we said, this is a very fragmented industry. And we see so many people, they never get out of the grind. They never actually scale. So how can we differentiate? That being said, then we started doing business. Clients started asking us for all kinds of shiny object stuff, and we like almost completely abandoned our plan and just started, taking on all kinds of different revenue, which helped us grow in the short term, but took a while to unwind some things that we let customers pull us into that were not our focus. Like I remember this thing called the CalPads, which is a nightmare for the K through 12 to track students and which districts they're in. People are like, hey, could you help us with? We do a lot of work with in the K-12 space, and we know it well. And they're like, hey, could you support our student information system and do this CalPads work? It was terrible. I hated the work. It was very hard to do. We made a little profit at it, but it ultimately cost us a lot because it took us off of our core offering and not focusing on those. So the years of growth, I think everybody sees that first $1 million in revenue, 5 million was another ceiling, breaking through that, seem processes start to break down, or you lack of processes because now you're not such a small team that it can just be a knowledge transfer from people's heads. And you have to start putting systems in place, documenting things. And as entrepreneurs, I don't think any of us wake up and say, oh, we want to implement process and documentation, right? It's like, no, we want to go out and make things happen and sell more and just figure it out. That 9-10 million was another sticking point because now there's all those reinvestment years, what I call, because you start needing management layers, you need systems in order to scale. And it's going to take a short-term hit to the bottom line to put those systems in. But you can only scale so far without a platform. And or it just becomes untenable. It really becomes untenable, especially if you want to keep up the quality of service, and we're in the service space. So reinvesting, getting the management layers. We did not have a single salesperson for the first 7 years of business. Like, we grew completely word of mouth. And then having to get a sales team and then building that. And then years later, actually figuring out a really good sales commission structure. And you're continually iterating through that and aligned incentives, aligning with the right partners. I'd say one of the biggest things for us, and we did all that prior to ever doing acquisitions. We've only done acquisitions in the last 5 years. So it was all organic up to that point. Was, with our team and different teammates, it was not just empowering them, but also having them become the relationship points with strategic partners and really nurturing those strategic partnership relationships. So those strategic partners, if you do it wrong, you beat up your partners on price. It's like, I just want to get your service for this so I can make more margin. When you do it right, you do it based on relationship and mutually adding value to each other. And when we started doing that with big partnerships, saying, we'll get every certification that you want, we'll go all in, we're going to know your product inside and out, we're going to know what the value proposition, and we're going to find unique ways to implement it alongside other solutions to drive unique value for customers. Those became huge lead generation sources and really upped our game. So through all those various iterations, and then eventually deciding, well, I'll take one step back. So a pivotal point was, we're being completely candid and authentic, right? It's like, around 2012, I got divorced in 2010. It was a chaotic time for me. There was a lot of stress between my business partner and I. We weren't getting along that great or communicating that great. And we had one employee in particular that really tried to get in between us and cause a lot of division, would play us against each other, had us convinced that, he could do everything next to sliced bread and the whole company would collapse if he left. And at that point, we were at a real low point. He was kind of like, everything sucks, everything's broken, it's never going to get better. If it wasn't for me fixing all these things. And then, of course, he got other people believing that within the company, where my business partner and I, we kind of said, screw it. Maybe we just sell. Let's sell the company. And we get approached. Even then, we were getting approached a lot. And we had a company approach us, and they made us an offer, and it was a good offer. And we liked the company. I mean, skiing in Tahoe together, went and saw their operations and all those things, and got through LOI and got the contract. And I hated the contract. The contract was a horrible contract. I saw lots of clawbacks and things. In fact, the M&A company still uses my line when they said, "Oh, just redline what you don't like." I said, I could just print this on red paper. But we looked at how they were buying us. And while they were underwriting us, they said, "You're one of the cleanest companies we've ever looked at. You've done this right from an HR standpoint. Your contracts have this. You have these processes and systems." Meanwhile, we had someone internal telling us we were crap, every day. And when we backed out of that deal, we were like, wow, we're way better. Let's get rid of the toxic person. He and I super reconnected, and we're like, let's flip the script. If they were going to buy us like that, why don't we buy other companies like that? Because we actually started digging into our own processes and systems through all that due diligence. And we were like, we actually are doing a lot of things right. Sure, there's a ton of things to improve upon. We just need people that are willing to help us improve upon them instead of just saying they suck. And that was a pivotal moment. 2 years later, we did our first acquisition.
That's incredible. So a big part of this is having a really good methodology in terms of, being able to keep your partnership as well, because that's a very huge integral part of that whole thing, that experience is, so what makes a good partner?
For me, it's intent. Like my business partner and I, we've been friends since third grade, and we probably could not be any more different kind of animals. However, and so I think that would cause some operational, tactical issues, right? Because I would see red, he would see green. But we also were trying to achieve the same objectives. But we never screwed each other. We never tried to take advantage of each other. And you have to get back to when you're irritated by those things, like we never wake up and say, how could I piss my business partner off today? And I truly believe he never wakes up and feels like that about me, and vice versa. So that really helps through. If you have questions of intent, of integrity, that's different. And you have to get to the bottom. I mean, if somebody is stealing, lying, doing immoral things, that's different. None of that was the case. This was more disconnection and operating styles, and realizing you can't let other people get in between something so special, right? And we had to have more connection points as friends again. And it's so easy to miss that in business, right? It's like you get in business because you're friends, and then you do none of the friend stuff after you're in business.
Mm-hmm.
We'll pause right there, because that sounds like replace business partner with spouse.
Yeah.
Everything you just said, sometimes there's a person trying to get in between you guys. If you get rid of the toxic person and then reconnect as friends, all of a sudden, great. Also, you two start off as friends, and then after you get married to your spouse, and then you stop doing the friend things. And then it's like, oh. And so you're like, we just have to reconnect as friends. That's what you said about your business partner. Just swap that with the spouse. Like all of that, it's just like, it's the same. It's so crazy.
It is. It's because we're all human. It's a relationship.
Human stuff. Right? That's what I was saying earlier. It's just human stuff. Humans experiencing human stuff. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. We're all experiencing human stuff still at every level.
We have the same fundamental needs, right? We want to be
Yeah.
heard. We want to be respected. We want to feel like we're safe, secure. And
Oh,
it's no different, business or personal.
this is so good. So this actually leads us right to the perfect transition into our triad of success. And the reason I say that is because we believe that true success is built on these three pillars, James: health, wealth, and relationships. So mastering these areas leads to a fulfilling life, if you will. What are key insights or philosophies that you have developed in your journey regarding health, wealth, and relationships?
Yeah. And for me, the other pillar, like I'd be remiss, I mean, is faith is huge for me.
Mm.
It keeps me so completely grounded, and to just think of all the chain of events of how we've gotten to where, I mean, we're on this podcast today. I mean, I'm sure there's steps I'm missing along the way, but if I didn't live in Modesto and I didn't meet Daniel Del Real, and if he and I didn't have coffee like 12 years ago and talk about just what an amazing human he is, and like him having more of a platform and him being in GoBundance and then him inviting me to the GoBundance event in Tahoe, and then me, I've never done a guy's trip. I like to travel the way I like to travel. I'm like, how am I going to travel with all these guys for 15 days in Morocco? And it was so beautiful. But if I hadn't said yes to that, we wouldn't be on this podcast today. Right.
And then
So
I would have never met you.
I would have never met Hone. Right. So, and so anyways, I look at all that, and I just don't think that by any stretch of imagination that that's all circumstance. But relationships have always been everything for me. I've watched that. My parents modeled that. I was so blessed to have such a great and have such a great set of parents. I've been married for 59 years. But they treated everybody the same. My dad had a friend who, when he met him, lived in a trailer. That guy ended up starting the first FM, white guy, started a first FM Spanish radio station. Later went on to stuff with Univision. The guy died a billionaire, right? So I would watch my dad, that guy, come to the house, pick my dad up in his Rolls Royce, and they would go have coffee and hang out. And here's my dad getting out of a Rolls Royce, and we grew up kind of in the hood, right? And 10 minutes later, I'd look, and my dad would be out front with his arm like wrapped around some big old Hell's Angel dude that drove by on a bike. And he would just start talking to him, and he would be praying for some guy and have the guy in tears. It's like some Hell's Angel dude. And then he'd be like, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm taking this box of fruit and I'm giving $50 to this guy down the street. You know, our neighbor over here, he just lost his job, and we didn't have a whole lot. Right. So for him to do it, but it was always this heart of service and giving and relationships. But what I took away from that was he treated everybody the same. It didn't matter what your economic, ethnic, any of those backgrounds were. Like, you were all human. And that's just how I grew up. And my neighborhood was very multicultural. And I love my childhood. My best friends, we've been friends since third grade. They're brothers. We've recently really reconnected with one of my other good friends, Raphael, who I grew up 2 doors down the street. We've been friends since 5. And you don't have those kind of relationships if you're not authentic. And what I love about those friendships is they could give a crap if I have money or not, or a business. Like, we grew up in the same neighborhood. It's just very relaxed. So that part, the health part, I've always like been fairly trim and healthy, but I never actually took exercise seriously and really until the thyroid cancer. I was like, okay, this matters. It doesn't matter how much. And I remember, like, now, if a money issue comes up, I'm like, well, if I'm alive, I still have the opportunity to make more money. So I'm not going to stress out about it. But if I'm not alive or I can't enjoy any of it, what's the point? Right. So it's again, like on the identity stuff, finding the right mentors. It just so happens all 3 of my best friends are yoked and work out 5 days a week or 6 days a week. And they're texting me every day, hey, it's a good day to go to the gym. And they're holding me accountable. And I'm starting to work out regularly and eat better. I have been eating a lot better, and I feel better. So, and I was talking with Adrian Akai that was on the Morocco trip, like being around these guys and watching them take their health seriously motivated me even more. So we don't realize how much other people may be watching us. And I was watching that on the trip, right? Here we are, we're on vacation. We have all these amazing luxuries and we stayed at some really cool places and great food, but just not going to excess and watching them still get up and work out and do those things. I was like, it was very impressive. So,
wow. Great answer. Great answer. No, James, this was a lot of fun. You're a great guest. You have a lot of stories for days, great success, a lot of life happened to you, like life you. But here you are smiling, optimistic, full of hope and everything else. Like it's great. It's refreshing. And I'm watching you now that I'm aware of who you are and what you've done. It's like, wow, this is somebody to model after, because it seems like you have a lot of things going for you. You have it. You have, it's almost like an SOP for everything, right? It's like your life seems pretty structured, but in a good way.
I'm just blessed to have a lot of great, amazing people in my life.
So if somebody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Yeah, Instagram, email. Email, I get a bajillion emails. I'm not the best at responding on email, but
what's your Instagram account for people to follow you?
White Lightning.
White light. Alvin knows the story of that. That's another grown up in the hood story. But James L. Bates. So
James
LinkedIn,
L. Bates.
James L. Bates, Instagram, James L. Bates.
Fantastic. Well, James, thank you again so much for being on today's show, for sharing all of your stories and just being authentic with who you are and the breakdowns that you've had, but also sharing with us the keys that you discovered to unlock these doors so that you can continue on your journey.
I love it. Thank you for having me. And we're always in the quest for keys because there's always new doors and new opportunities, right? It never ends.
Always.
That's
Always.
right.
Yep. Look at him. Even responding in the theme. That's great. That's great. All right, guys. Until the next episode, I'm Hone. That's Alvin. That's James. See you guys then. See ya.
See you guys later.
Thank you. See ya.